We're also selling food now.
No, that can't be right. You're Philip Morris. You sell cigarettes.
You ever wonder why food is so addictive?
No, not really. It never really occurred to me.
Oh, that's probably because it's 1997 and consumers are still a bit naive. So you haven't noticed that we've been out buying up all the big food brands.
But what do cigarettes and food have to do with each other?
Well, nothing at first. You see, in the 80s, there was some real growing hatred towards tobacco companies. The public was starting to recognize all of the massive amounts of death that we were responsible for. But also, they saw for the first time a corporation engaged in a massive, decades-long cover-up.
Right, because we trust companies to do what's right for us. So it was pretty shocking when we found out just how far the tobacco industry had let greed get the better of them.
Yeah, it was just our industry. In the 60s, nearly half of all Americans smoked, and by the 90s, that was down to 1 in 4. So we had a major crisis on our hands.
And food was the logical investment.
Hell no! Financially speaking, food was a terrible investment, but this was about branding. We wanted to be seen as a trustworthy, family-friendly company again. So in 1985, we bought General Foods.
Oh, that's a great company! Shake and Bake, Maxwell Coffee, Bill Cosby with those little Jell-O cups.
Well, that actually gives me an idea. How would you feel about a nice, refreshing smoke with a bowl of Fruity Pebbles?
Oh, well, no, I don't smoke, so that sounds awful.
Sure, yeah, we're still trying to figure out the synergy between the two industries. But that didn't stop us from also buying Kraft in 1988.
Another excellent choice. Capri Sun, Kraft low-fat mayo, mac and cheese.
Yeah. Oh, well, what about this? What if we created like a Velveeta-flavored filter?
Like a menthol?
Yeah, but instead of mint, you get like a nice smoky cheese flavor deep in your lungs.
Maybe, yeah, I'd check it out.
That's great. You see, the problem is by 1997, instead of becoming a well-diversified corporation, we had essentially become a tobacco company that sold food. 53% of our sales came from food, but 2/3 of our profit came from tobacco.
Which is steadily declining because of the lying.
And death. We lied a lot to cover up the death. So we really need to find a way to make food profitable.
This is where good old-fashioned American capitalistic ingenuity comes in. You're going to find some really clever ways to make better food for your customers.
Not exactly, no.
If there's one thing that we've learned as a tobacco company, it's how to get people to want our products. So, after we bought Kraft and General Foods in the 1980s, our scientists got to work. You're talking about food scientists, right? That's actually a pretty good name for them, because up until now, they were just the scientists that were helping us figure out if you added nicotine and sugar and ammonia to cigarettes, it makes them way more addictive. But now they're heading up our product engineering departments. Why do you keep calling them products? 'Cause you're making food, right? Hey, I'm a food scientist, I guess. You see, just like cigarettes, we can narrow down what we call bliss points in food, which is the perfect balance of things like sugar, salt, and fat, which you're doing to make the food better.
Yeah, we want to make food better.
To the point where you can't even put it down. Nope. We didn't invent the diet food craze. That started in the late 70s. But by the time we got into the food industry, everyone wanted fat-free, which tastes like shit because it's bland and dry. That's because fat makes things taste good. Some companies had already started experimenting with adding sugar to food to compensate for flavor. But once tobacco companies like us got involved, we took it to a whole new level. I guess I'm still just a little confused here, guys, because, it sounds like you're just making the diet food taste better.
Not quite.
We're not just relying on taste testers to tell us what's yummy. We had already turned addiction into a science, and all that research came with us in the 80s when we got into food. Sensory testing, market segmentation, addiction modeling, cross-branding techniques. That fat-free cookie that tastes like chalk? Turns out it's actually hyperpalatable when you ratchet up the sugar and starch levels. And since there's no fat, it doesn't really fill you up. So we can sell you a guilt-free experience for you to just keep eating and eating and eating straight to Diabetes Town. Diabetesville.
What?
Oh, shut up. You focus on science. If I'm being completely honest, guys, I'm still struggling a bit because you're a food company, which I associate with nourishment and trust. And this sounds like, well, maybe not that. So for my brain, it's hard to, I don't get it. Yeah, well, remember, tobacco had a crisis. The reason that we got into food in the first place was to rebrand. So it would make sense that it might break your sweet, naive little 1990s brain. Don't you ever wonder why fast food restaurants all serve soda? What do you mean? I guess, well, soda just goes with burgers. That's what you do. Yeah, but why? Well, I mean, it gets rid of that, feeling in your mouth. This is the perfect illustration of understanding the science behind food. The burgers, fries, other fast food, they're all high in fat, and it leaves that coating behind in your mouth. And that is a problem because it signals to your body that you're not hungry anymore. And we can't sell you food if you're not hungry. But along comes soda, and it's sugary and acidic and carbonated, and it washes the grease right out of your mouth. So then I can eat more. And understanding how sensory stimulus impacts eating, that's just one thing. Since soda is sugary, it also creates what we call a double reinforcement loop. Your body naturally gets tired of the same flavor after a while, so there's only so long you're going to enjoy a burger. But if you do a bite of burger, a sugary drink, yada yada, you're prolonging how long you're enjoying burger. Which means you buy more burgers. But also, that sugar is reinforcement because it causes your brain to release dopamine. And now you associate fast food with happy. Kind of like when you want someone to fall in love with you, you give them a piece of chocolate before your first kiss. Wait, what? That's creepy. And soda's been around for like 150 years, hasn't it? No. We didn't invent any of those things, and it is a little weird. But since we're dialed into the science of addiction, we really leaned into things like bundling, including soda with Lunchables, or a cross-promotional offer, like a nice Kraft dinner with a Coca-Cola coupon. I don't know how much I actually enjoy learning all of this. Yeah, the world kind of sucks. Internal documentation shows that we were experimenting with all sorts of weird shit to try and figure out how to use cigarettes and food to sell more cigarettes and food. Gonna blow your socks off here, but how about we launch some cigarette-shaped gum for kids that comes in some nifty little cigarette-themed packaging? What if we infused gum with nicotine and we added sugar crystals to create a double reinforcement loop? What if we just infused the nicotine right into the food? Or we could cross-brand cigarettes as a dietary aid to go with indulgent foods for obese housewives. I invented a microwavable pack of smokes. Why would we want that? It's like a cleaner, smokeless smoke. You microwave the cigarettes long enough to release some fumes, but they don't fully combust. I love that you're trying to reinvent a dying product, but let's stick with food. Guys, I think you made your point. And I'll be honest, I don't think I trust food companies quite as much as I did when we started the video. You're not alone in that. We couldn't keep the smell of cigarettes off these companies for too long. What started out as rebranding just turned into a transfer of information and strategy. Kraft Foods spun off as its own company when it IPO'd in 2001. And the tobacco company, a rare illustration of when companies put people over profits, they filed for bankruptcy, right? No. In 2003, Philip Morris rebranded as Altria, which is alive and well. They own brands like Marlboro and Black & Mild, and they're also major shareholders in companies like Juul. But at least the food industry, they went back to nourishing their customers by focusing on high-quality food. Nope, the genie was already out of the bottle. Giant food conglomerates had already been reshaped to prioritize addictive over healthy food. Kraft spun off some of its brands in 2012. Kraft itself got bought by a private equity firm in 2015, who supercharged the whole thing by gutting a bunch of the company and focusing on cheap, mass-market food. It's almost like there's something unique about tobacco and food industries that made you susceptible to unchecked corporate greed. Yeah, it was just us. We got greedy. I'm actually heading over to tech. I hear it's a lot better over there.